Okay, so picking up with music and words. So let's make sure we're on slide number 9. Okay, music and words. So let's talk about something called non-lexical. So non-lexical music, right? So we're going to talk about two kinds of non-lexical music. So the first kind is scat singing, and the second kind will be vocalese. So first, scat singing. Well, actually, before that, let's talk about what non-lexical means. So non-lexical means the sort of the use of nonsensical syllables. And so scat singing is a kind of singing with nonsensical syllables. And scat singing specifically is a kind of vocal improvisation. Remember improvisation? The idea when musicians kind of make up music on the spot during performance. So, scat singing, a vocal improvisation using wordless vocables. So these vocables are these kind of syllables, right? These kind of nonsensical syllables. This term vocables we're going to encounter several other times during this course of this class. So make sure you remember this word vocables. Okay, so a great example of scat singing is a tune called It Could Happen to You. And specifically the part from about 1 minute 20 seconds to about 1 minute 57 seconds. There's a great little scat singing solo kind of in the middle of this track. So check that out, okay? All right, so let's move on to our next slide, number 10. And let's look up, or let's talk about vocalese. So vocalese, again, is another kind of non-lexical music, right? So specifically, though, vocalese is what happens when composers write the voice as an instrument. And they have a vocalist, a singer, sing a neutral sound like perhaps ah, right? That syllable ah. And they just kind of stick with that one syllable. And so vocalese is different from scat singing in that it's not improvised, right? So vocalese, you actually have a composer who sits there and writes out exactly what what they want on their music, right? Say, I want the singer to sing this syllable ah just like this, right? So it's not improvised. It's not made up on the spot during a performance. It's composed beforehand. So listen to Bachianas Brasileiras number 5. This is a piece by a Brazilian composer named Heitor Villa-Lobos. And really the first couple of minutes are a vocalese. After that, it goes into, then the singer starts singing something in Portuguese. So at that point, it's not vocalese. But the first couple minutes are vocalese. So check that out. And remember, non-lexical music, we have a couple different kinds, scat singing and vocalese. All right, so know the differences between those. And then let's move on to slide number 11. So here's another idea that's going to come up again and again throughout this course. And it's the idea of secular and the idea of sacred music. So secular music and sacred music. So secular music refers to music that is non-religious, whereas sacred music refers to music that is religious, right? And sacred music it doesn't, we're not referring to any particular religion, right? We could be talking about Catholicism, we could be talking about Islam or Judaism, or any number of other religions, right? Whatever music is associated with a specific religion, we could call that sacred music. So back to secular music. So secular music, remember, non-religious music, and it's generally sung in the language of the people, right? The common people, aka the vernacular, right? So know this term vernacular. This is going to come up throughout this class. So vernacular just means the language of the people. So let's sort of juxtapose that against in some religions, in some religious music, it's going to be a little different. So like in the West, right, in Catholicism, for example, right, so the music written for Catholic practice or in Catholic Church, prior to, I guess, the 1960s, the Catholic Church was primarily conducted all in Latin, right? We're talking not just the music, but all the sermons and everything. So after the 1960s, it kind of changed. That's a whole other class. But in this class, we'll just talk about, just for one example here, Latin for centuries was not considered the vernacular, right? It was considered, this is the language of the church, right? So if you lived in, say, Germany, back in the 1200s, right? If you went to church, how about actually Spain? We'll pick Spain. That's a better example. So if you lived in Spain in like the 1200s, back in like the Middle Ages, and you went to Catholic Church, everything would have been done in Latin, right? And you would have been singing in Latin. They would have been taught, all the clergy people, it would all been spoken in Latin, right? Because it's the language of the church. And whether or not you understood Latin didn't matter if you were Spanish and went there. Now, when you went home, you would probably not be speaking Latin, right? Especially if you didn't know Latin. When you went home, you'd be speaking in Spanish. And if you were writing music, if you were writing secular music, you'd be doing it probably in Spanish. So there's kind of a difference there. So know the difference between secular music and sacred music. It is an idea that will come up later in this class. Okay, so now moving on to slide number 12. So a little bit about the difference between verses and choruses. That's what we want to hear. So verses or stanzas or strophes, so all those three terms, stanzas, strophes, or verses, that we see here on slide number 12 at the top, that refers to it's all the same thing, right? We're talking about, let's get an example going here. So remember our song Something by the Beatles, George Harrison specifically. So we have our first verse. Remember we talked about something in the way she moves attracts me like no other lover. Something in the way she woos me. So that's our first verse, right? And then later on, after we go through this, I don't want to leave her now, I believe in how, then we go back to the beginning and we plug in verse 2, right? So we plug in these words, so we take out these ones, something in the way she moves, and we do something in the way, or something in her smile she knows, right? So we plug in verse number 2, as hopefully you can see there, into here, but we use the same melody that's here, and we use the same chords and harmony. So that's what a verse is, right? It's this kind of poetic text, often rhymed, that make up the verses in both popular music, like something is considered popular music, and art music, right? Art music is more music in the classical tradition, right? So like in the West, we have like classical music, and if you listen to Bacchianus Brasiliaris number 5, and you got past the vocalise and you got kind of the middle section, then there's lyrics in Portuguese, and that would be considered art music. Not just that one part. I don't know why I said that. The whole that whole piece would be considered art music, right? It's kind of in the classical tradition. So, anyways, so verses, right? They're these, right? We talked about this. They're these different words that are sung to the same music, right? Different verses or stanzas or strophes. And remember, verses, stanzas, strophes, it all means the same thing, right? Those are synonyms. And strophes, that's where we get, remember when we talked about strophic form? That's what we're talking about here. So that's what a verse is. And then, okay, then we're going to compare that to the idea of chorus or refrain, right? So chorus is the part of the music where that usually come after a verse or a stanza, and it remains generally unchanged, right? So if we go back and listen to something, we notice that not only do we have these verses, but we also have the chorus, and we can see the chorus starts right here. And if you go back and listen to this whole song, we have like, you're asking me, will my love grow? I don't know, I don't know. You stick around, and okay, and then it goes on. So the chorus, we don't plug in new words, right? The chorus words, they just stay the same the whole time, okay? So the verses, aka the stanzas, aka the strophes, those are usually we have different words to the same music, but with the chorus, aka the refrain, it's going to be, we have the same words recur every time. Another way to think about this, if you ever listen to hip hop artists, when they're talking about writing songs, they'll refer, instead of saying chorus or refrain, they might say the hook, right? So the hook for them is this part that remains generally unchanged, that recurs throughout the song. And then also, if you listen to hip hop artists talk about writing songs, they'll talk about verses, right? And sometimes they will, they'll hire another hip hop artist to come up with a verse for their song, right? So they'll, especially if it's somebody popular, right? Like some hip hop artists who maybe aren't so popular, they might want a more popular artist to contribute a verse to their song so that their song will become more popular. So like maybe you might say some obscure hip hop artist hires Drake. He says, Drake, I'll pay you $100,000 to contribute a verse to this one song. Because if the obscure hip hop artist knows if he has Drake on his track, then it's going to get more streams, it's going to get more views on YouTube. It's just going to get more listens, right? Because everybody knows Drake, they don't know the obscure hip hop artist. So, so then he'll pay Drake a certain amount of money. Drake will record it. He'll send it back, probably through email or something like that. And that's a verse, right? And that the obscure hip hop artist will include that on his music. So the obscure hip hop artist might do the first verse, and then he'll maybe have the chorus or the hook or the refrain happen. Then he'll have Drake's verse, right? Which is different words, kind of to the same music. Okay, and then there might, with especially with hip hop, you might have another verse with another artist, right? So the words can change for the verses, but for the hook, All right, that's going to stay the same, or the refrain or the chorus. All right,